Welcome to Rock That Relationship, a podcast about all things relationship with Corey and Tracy.
Now let's get real and start creating relationships that rock.
Welcome to Rock That Relationship. Today we are talking about the healing plan. And this is part of our series on healing after a breakup. And so today we're going to have a really interesting conversation about what a healing plan is. Does it work? Tracy and I had really different experiences about how we've approached healing after breakups. And we're going to chat a little bit about what those differences were. We did have some things that crossed over a little bit that worked for us, but mostly our processes were really different. And we're going to get a chance to explore that. So hopefully you all as our listeners can figure out, are there some things that we did or we didn't do that might work for you in the healing process? So let's get us started here and talk about healing. I mean, after every breakup, there's some type of healing process. Some of them are shorter than others and longer than others. And, you know, we approach them probably very differently depending on what happened. But both of us have had, you know, enough breakups. That's what makes us so much of experts to be able to do this great podcast, is we're kind of proficient at breaking up or trying to heal. Though, you know, there are some things that just have worked and didn't work for us. So let me turn it over to Tracy. So when we talk about healing after a breakup, what has been your process for approaching healing? Has it been kind of more of an organized process, like planned out, like here are the things I'm going to intentionally do to heal? Or is it more kind of just like a little bit more haphazard?
It's what I would call scattershot. I don't plan anything. I didn't plan a single thing, and I just kind of do what comes to me. And I'd like to go back and just say, I'm not sure we're proficient at breakups, but we've been through enough breakups that we've learned how to deal with them. Let's say it that way.
If we were to go through it in a time machine and we could go back and do our breakups again, we know
because
more
we
now.
Know. Yes, but if we were broken up with now, we'd be just as much of a hot mess as we were before.
Well, that is true.
It's just how you get through it, how you manage to endure it, that really is important. And I think that that's what we're talking about. Is you're a planner. I'm not a planner. I'm very ADHD diagnosed and everything. And so I couldn't sit down to write like a plan out to save my life. And so it was amazing for me to watch you with your plan, which, you know, my process in this latest round of breakups, mine came 6 months after yours, or something like 8 months after yours. And no, I couldn't get it together. I could not get it together to do what you did.
Well, maybe not getting it together is part of your process, right? Is letting like the universe sort of unfold in front of you. Whereas, you know, I'm a little type A. Well, when I say a little type A, okay, so I'm very type A. And, you know, it's funny because we're both Virgo. So I could say, well, I'm a Virgo and you're a Virgo too. So, but I had this, you know, this plan. At first I was just wallowing and just like, what in the world am I supposed to do? And And then I finally just sat down and said, all right, I'm going to write out a plan of everything that I am going to try so that I can feel better. And I started listing things right and left, things, some of them I'd already done, I'd already tried. And I was like, well, I'll just put that on the healing plan and maybe keep doing it. And other things I added, like, I'm going to try this and see if it works. I mean, you know, going back to that idea where we've talked a lot about it, about intention, you know, being intentional about what you're doing.
Well, is this just the last breakup, or is this something you do every time? And like, I don't want you to have another breakup, but let's say you had one. Would you pull out this healing plan? Like, you know, was this just this last one?
It was just this last one. The ones before that, I was like what you're saying, kind of like a Tasmanian devil, hot mess, just, oh my goodness, head above water. And frankly, the healing plan for my most recent breakup has actually helped me heal from other breakups that I didn't realize there were things that I had left unattended. And so, yeah, I am going to keep this. Not that I wish to be broken up with or, you know, ever again. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But in the event that it does, I have this healing plan that I feel like in many ways worked for me. And I'm not sure if it was, you know, in some sense, it was some of the items on the plan that worked, but part of it was just gaining control over my own life enough to say, here is how I am going to heal. Because during, you know, like after a breakup, especially if you're broken up with, or it ends in a kind of a sudden way, or it just feels like, for me, like I'm spinning out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm spinning out of control, the first thing I want to do is grab onto anything that feels like I can have control. And being able to control my healing, which we know isn't really all that possible, did give me a sense of satisfaction. So the plan itself was healing, let alone the items
Making
on
the
the plan.
plan.
Yeah.
Like
right.
making a plan,
Making the
deciding
plan.
that you were going to have a plan.
Yeah. And then knowing that it was like a checklist and that I had a purpose, right? Like my purpose wasn't just to cry and eat ice cream. My purpose was to actually go through these items on the list, try them all out, and I could distract myself and focus on other things and work to heal. And I had a goal, and that in and of itself, that process was healing. It didn't even matter what I put on there. I could have put like mow the lawn or something, and it would have just felt like I had a sense of control over my own healing.
Well, it's interesting because you say like a breakup, you're spinning out of control. And I have the sense that it's like a free fall. Like I feel like I'm just falling, like falling through space, you know? And so for me, I can't even grab onto anything. I feel like that's the difference, you know, like I'm just falling and I need to just keep falling until I finally hit the bottom. And for me, that's, you know, in this latest one took me 10 months, right? To be able to hit that bottom, to be able to close some doors and walk, like stand up and walk away. And I think that, you know, I watched you because I was present for this last one, and so strange because I didn't know you before, right? Like I met you I think the day of or something right around that time. And it's very interesting to watch you because I wasn't in that place at that time. I was in a weird place of not having friends and trying to make community because I was, you know, recently divorced. Not sad about the divorce, but sad about my life being so different, you know? And you were very controlled. Like, I mean, it's interesting because we are both Virgos. I also am type A. I'm a lawyer, so I am somewhat type A, but you're very organized. You're an organized type A person. And, you know, as I watched you, I did say, you need to write this down. You need to put this in a book because it was so interesting to see, you know, and I think it's so helpful. And I think at one time I said, like, this should be like a list of things that you need to do. So did you I don't remember, did you put this stuff like in a spreadsheet? It's like every day you came up with something new that you were telling me that you were going to do, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't put it in a spreadsheet, but I did put it in a Microsoft Word document. But anyways,
same thing.
And, you know, and I had categories. So categories of items too, that I had some categories like, reclaiming space. That was a category. How was I going to go about reclaiming my physical space, my emotional space? How was I going to engage in personal growth? How was I going to do energy healing? What was I going to focus on with my well-being? And I came up with those items. Some of them I came up with ahead of time and said, these are things that I think are going to work, just given what I know about myself. Like I'm an active and athletic person. I knew that doing a lot more fitness things or, you know, engaging in some kind of training was going to be helpful. So I put that on the list even before I tried it. Some of the things I just came across and I found that I was like, oh, I'm going to try that. I never thought about trying that before, but I'm going to go ahead and do that and then see if it works and then put it on my healing plan. And if it continues to work, keep going back. And then if not, just leave it.
When you say you came across, are you saying like you Googled like what to do in a breakup, or was this like on podcasts, or like how did these things come to you?
Some of them were like things like suggestions from you and other people like, oh, have you thought about doing this? And then others were things I Googled. Others were things that came up in books that I was reading, podcasts I was reading or listening to. And, you know, some of them were really obvious. Like I knew things like I already had therapy on my list and I had, you know, a number of things that felt, you know, kind of obvious that I would do, cleanse my space, you know, maybe journal, those things. But there were other things that I really didn't kind of jump onto until later on in the game. So like, for instance, you know, I had been looking through the Meetup app and I found, an opportunity to go to a like full moon labyrinth walk at the park. And they had like lit the whole thing up with all these twinkle lights and you have this mantra and you say the mantra out loud and then you walk around and you're supposed to like put the mantra out into the universe. And like I left and I was like, well, I just like walked around the park in silence with a bunch of strangers with this weird mantra in my head. And I don't know what I was expecting to have happen from that, but nothing happened. So I was like, well, that was on the healing list because I came across it, but I didn't find it didn't resonate with me enough to ever go back to another labyrinth again.
I wonder if we did our own though. You know what I mean? Like if
our
it
own
was
labyrinth.
more geared towards what we were talking about. Like if you were intentional about having that kind of thing and you were like, okay, this is about breakups. This is about healing and about being able to move forward. And it was more like, what was that one? What was the subject matter even? Like, what was the mantra? Do you remember?
Yeah. The mantra was that I was going to get through this healing process. And it was like, I don't know, something quickly and effectively or something, you know, because that was that was my mission statement for my whole healing plan, was that I was going to get through this because you know what, being, you know, after a breakup, no matter if you're the breaker upper or not, it still just hurts. And I was like, I want the hurt to last as little time as possible. Therefore, if I have this plan, I'm going to be able to accelerate this so that I don't have to suffer. So I would I went to Reiki and she said, say a mantra. And it was the same mantra as the labyrinth. It was like, okay, I'm going to move through this, you know, quickly and effectively through this healing process. And
so it was your own mantra that you came up with.
Yeah, it was my own mantra. But at the same time, it was like, was I trying to convince myself? Like, you know, what did the mantra serve? And so, you know, I mean, it was nice. That was a goal for my healing plan, but I'm not sure that moving through my healing quickly is a goal that I could really even achieve. I mean, I moved through the healing as fast as I moved through the healing. I mean, I just heal when I heal, you know, and arguably we're all healing for a very, very long time after the initial sort of burn or pain or hurt subsides. We still continue to heal. I'm still healing from things from my own childhood and my adolescence. And so, you know, I think that's an important piece to remember is that, you know, sometimes we can't control things. And for me, my healing plan was an effort to try to control something. And while it definitely had its downsides, right? With this idea that I know I can't control something. It also gave me a sense of control in trying to control, which is sort of.
And I think it did help you because you were like a busy little bee all the time, with all your activities, you know what I mean? Because you would, as we know, like the healing, you're sad and then you're feeling good and then you're plummeted back down to the depths and then you're, you know, back the next day feeling okay. And so it really is, you have to be intentional about, I think, it's not just being busy, but being intentionally doing things or intentionally doing things to help move you forward. Like, you know, I mean, for me, that was always hiking. Right? Like even today, it helps me work so much stuff out. And I was thinking, you know, I have this Grand Canyon a hike plan for the spring. And I was thinking, what did I want to think about it, you know, on that hike? And so I've already decided what I'm going to meditate on that whole day and why I've picked that certain weekend. So I think those things are important. It doesn't have to be like a written down plan, but when you're doing stuff, give it some meaning. You know what I mean? Like while you're doing the activity, you can also be trying to work through something, you know?
Well, yeah. And I think it's interesting that, you know, you're not going to the Grand Canyon for a few months, and the idea that you already kind of planned out how you're going to meaningfully use that time for your own self-awareness and self-growth. That in and of itself is a plan. It is a healing plan. It might not be healing from a breakup per se. It might be, you know, just your own growth.
Well, this is a childhood wound that I need to heal. And, you know, I think I was thinking about it today and of course I'm always thinking of books I can write and then I never write them. But I was thinking about that because I'm going to do a lot of miles and I really want to be intentional. I really want to work this through so I can let this go, you know, and I did that with this last breakup. I feel like I know that it annoyed certain of my friends, perhaps you're one of them, but like that I wallowed for so long, but I don't feel like it was wallowing, and you were very kind. So I know that you put up with a lot, but, I had to have that process. I had to have that ruminating. And even though I know we're not supposed to ruminate or speculate, like we do, and it was helpful for me. And it's always helpful to have somebody to be able to go who understands, and I know they get sick of it. So you have to be careful about how much you talk to people about something, but to say like, I just need to talk about this one more time or something.
Right. Well, I mean, let me ask you though. I mean, you kind of have this plan for something you want to do at the Grand Canyon, but I do know, having kind of been with you through this last breakup, that, you were really intentional about specific things that you did while not kind of clustering them into a plan per se. Like I know you took up, really got more involved in pickleball and a few other things that you had done that were really intentional. But thinking about like a bigger picture, would maybe having had a healing plan helped you, where you kind of consolidate all these things and give a little bit more foresight on what you wanted to gain from the different things you were doing to help you through the process? Or do you think it would have been too confining?
That's a very good question. And I think that that's what each person has to figure out. I think for me, it'd have been too confining. Like so many things I find confining, but it could have been helpful. I mean, I probably modeled some of my stuff after you, but if I had a plan, if I had written down, I mean, maybe if I had a list and I could say, okay, you're really flailing today, or, you are wallowing, which I don't even think I really wallow that much because I get out and about and do stuff, but I just get in my car and like, listen to the same sad songs over and over. Could I have moved that forward? Like it's all about this reframing your thoughts and stuff. And I think that plan, I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I think if I had tried it that way, it could have been helpful. But again, I feel like I healed in the right amount of time for me, like the what's that, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, like I can't remember that tale.
This one was just right.
Right. Exactly. Like, you know what I mean? Like one's too hot for me, but maybe it's perfect for you. One, that's why it's so individual. It's like, here's the information, it's out there, and help yourself to what works for you, and try something and then let it go. Try it, let it go. Try it, let it go,
Exactly. Well, I mean, and that goes to two things, right? As we're talking about intentional with a bigger plan, saying how I'm going to go about this process, and intentional about the things you would maybe put on the plan, and whether or not you had a plan didn't really, in some ways matter, because you were very intentional about the things you chose to engage in. And for me, I probably was just as intentional about the planning process as I was about the items that were on the plan. And, you're right. Some things just, some things I put on the plan or, and tried, and they just didn't work. Like I remember a lot of people were saying, go get acupuncture. And I'd had acupuncture one other time. Acupuncture is a wonderful healing tool for so many people. It made me very anxious laying there in a very vulnerable position because, as our listeners have probably figured out, I don't like being out of control. And I found that the process of acupuncture was more stressful than it was valuable to me. And so while I put it on my list and I tried it and I did it twice, I was just like, I couldn't get over the, being kind of trustworthy of laying there with needles poking out of me. I kept thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to evacuate the building and I'm going to have all these needles, and like, and I know that's kind of silly, but like for me, it was more stressful. So it was on the plan, and guess what? It came right off the plan.
Wait, was that the first time you'd ever had acupuncture in your life?
No, I'd had it one other time, like 20 years before. And I kind of remembered having that anxiety. And then I thought, oh, well, it's been a long time. I'll go try it again. And I went one time and I was like, okay. And then she said, well, this really works if you have it like a couple times so that, we can see, because I was having some knee pain and I've been doing a lot of hiking. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll come back a second time. And I didn't really notice anything different with my knee pain. And I probably honestly did not go enough times to actually make a difference, because I do hear amazing miracle stories from people who go to acupuncturists. But at the end of the day, it was just too stressful of an experience for me that it wasn't healing me. It was making me nervous and anxious. So I put it on the plan. I tried it, wrote it, write it right off the plan.
Well, that's good. That's knowing what you need. And, it's interesting that you went to acupuncture I wasn't aware of that, for emotional stuff. Like I've gone to, I swear by acupuncture has saved my, after being hit by a car and everything, the extreme amount of pain I was in, acupuncture took that physical pain away. But I don't think I would ever use it for emotional stuff. But you like Reiki. I found that to be totally worthless.
You called me afterwards and you're like, well, I slept through the whole thing. I'm like, well,
okay, so it wasn't worthless. I
It's
take
like,
it back. No, I
it's
had a
like
really
going to
good
a
nap.
movie
I had
and
a really
sleeping
nice
through the whole
nap.
thing and saying, I didn't like that movie. Like you
I
didn't
had a,
get.
no, I take it back. It wasn't worthless. I had a great nap. It was like the best. I was sound asleep. And like, I have no fear. Like, who knows what was happening in that room? I was like out, totally
Well,
out. So
if anything, it did
having
help
it,
you sleep if you.
well, I wouldn't go back. And we did do tarot cards together, which you'd already been doing tarot cards. And I enjoyed the tarot cards, but not the lady with her pendulum swinging, because I felt like she couldn't manipulate the tarot cards at all, but I felt like she could manipulate the pendulum.
The
And I was
pendulum, yeah.
distrustful of that, because she would ask it a question and then it'd swing one way. But I was like watching her hand the whole time to see if she was manipulating that. Whereas like with tarot cards, you just shuffle the deck and turn the cards over. And that was oddly very accurate for
Yeah.
me and for you,
Well, yeah.
like,
And that worked. And, and it's like, just like your skepticism or distrust in the pendulum swinging, I held on with every, ounce of energy I had to see which way this pendulum would swing. And so for me, that worked, right? Were there some
right.
things that, that you tried that you said this worked initially? Like one of the items that would normally be on like what I would call my healing plan, like something on your, non-written down kind of healing process that worked at first, but then you just sort of grew out of it, or it just wasn't as effective as it was at the initial onset of your breakup?
Well, I think maybe like the podcasts about specific to breakups,
Yeah.
they were so, so, so helpful at first, but then I started to feel, okay, I need a little bit of a break. But I've gone back to them, and I'd like to listen to them just anyway, because I have, girl crushes on some of those ladies, and they're just so smart, and they're
Yeah.
so caring, and they were so helpful to me during a really dark time of my life. But, no, I mean, therapy, was crucial for me, obviously. And then, no, I mean, I don't know that I did anything that didn't work, because pickleball just became a community for me, a sport that I'm now very dedicated to, and a community, So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. I had played pickleball before when I was married and everything, before divorce was on the table. And then after the breakup, after the divorce, that pickleball saved me, as you know, because we played
Mm-hmm.
in the evenings. And my God, if I hadn't had that pickleball to go to pretty much every night of the week, to keep me from sitting at home and being sad, but it turned into something completely different. It turned into pretty much like I'm a dedicated pickleball player now.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I remember when you started going and you're like, I like pickleball. I'm good at pickleball. I'm doing it for recreation. I'm doing it to keep myself busy. I'm doing it for sport. And then what you found was that all of those things were true, and you made a lot of friends and really connected with people, which I know is important for you. So sometimes things that might be like an intentional healing effort may serve more than the purpose that we imagined. Like at first it's like, oh, I thought this was going to be the outcome. And then it's like, wow, it was so much more and healed me on so many levels. And I've seen that with you, and how important pickleball isn't just like you go and you play pickleball. You like go and experience pickleball for its entirety.
Yeah, and the people there and the competitiveness. And for me, I'm just leveling up. So that makes a big difference. I did have an experience hiking the other day. I like to time myself when I hike, and I do run a lot of these trails. And I, came upon a woman, and I didn't want to scare her, so I told her I was coming. And then we ended up talking, and I thought, I'm going to keep running. Like, I got to go. But I was like, just talk to her for a minute. And we ended up finishing the hike together. And she was so cool. And it was like, we talked about things that was so helpful, just in a general sense. And now we're Facebook friends, of course.
Of
And
course.
I was like, just sometimes you're doing the things, the running and hiking, the trail running is critical for me, right? I need it. I cannot live without it, probably. And yet I stopped that, because I was like, okay, it's one day. I don't need to time myself every day. And maybe I'm enjoying this conversation with this woman. So I should stay and talk to her, and it turned out, her daughter's a professional basketball player and a lesbian. And it was really cool. Like, I was like, wow, had I just kept running, and that's slowed down, I would have missed a whole opportunity to connect with someone. And I feel like when you're in a breakup situation and you're trying to like get yourself out of that, to heal, to go forward, connection with other people is vital. And I mean, that's your kind of, if you want to say you have a mantra, I mean, that's what you do. You're like the meetup queen.
Yeah. Well, and this is a perfect example of how you start with one thing you think is going to help you heal, like the hiking and the timing yourself. You and I are both really into, kind of setting fitness goals. And that was on my healing plan. But you're right. Sometimes those morph and change into other things. And you had an opportunity for connection, which may not have been necessarily a direct correlation with your breakup healing, but it's fulfilling in a sense where that particular activity results in way more than just setting some type of fitness goal. Now you are connecting with people, just like pickleball. And I think that's the thing that's important is, while I had this healing plan and I had items on my plan, some things worked, some things didn't, some things worked for a while and then stopped working, and some things morphed into new things, right? Like, certainly things around, therapy. Originally, therapy was just, I see my counselor once a week, and then it morphed into, wait, I need other types of therapy. And I saw a breakup coach. And so, I was able to expand my definition of what therapy looked like for me. I didn't go into the healing plan thinking I was going to do that. But sometimes we have these kind of alternative, results that happen, or in addition to, or instead of what we intended to. And those themselves for me, I allowed myself the ability to veer from my healing plan, one way or another, depending on kind of the situation that presented itself to me. So, as you're talking about stopping and talking on the trail with someone, that's basically saying, okay, here, I'm just checking myself. What is it that I need right now? And right now I need to talk to this woman. I don't need to go running by and set yet another time for the same trail that I do almost every day. This is what I need. And so being able to assess that and choose your path, for me, even though I had this very type A healing plan, that was really critical to say, this is going to morph and change as I go through the process. And I have to be okay with that. As much as I want to be in control of my healing, I have to be okay with the fact that my healing is going to keep changing as I go through the process.
Well, so if you think of it like a path, right? You're on the path, like you're dedicated to, walking this path, but there are like side paths. There's, little paths going off of it. And I think if you take that time to explore those, it gives you a much richer experience and yes, the path is really important and you've got an end goal and you want to get there, but sometimes you can, deviate or take a little break or whatever, knowing you'll come back to that path, but that there could be something really valuable down the side path,
Yeah. Or the side path might lead you even somewhere better.
Interesting.
Yeah. Right. So let me ask you this. What were the advantages and disadvantages of how you approached your healing, maybe after your most recent breakup? What really worked about kind of how your process, not like the actual things that you did, but your process for going about healing? What worked and what didn't really work?
I feel like it all worked because I'm really happy now. Right. So like it worked. It took a while. Maybe some people thought it took too long. I don't think so. I feel like it went just right. And I don't think there was anything that didn't work. I suppose people listening to me might have been like, oh my God, we think she should move forward a little
I think
sooner.
there were times in which I thought, I'm not sure if something's working for you to move forward, but you were in your own time, in your own space, right? Not according to my 44 point healing plan. You were going at your own pace with your own things and your own process.
Well, yeah. And that is something that I would like to talk about. I've told you about my best friend, who has what she calls her speed processing. And she wanted me to get on her speed processing timeline. And she like takes it, looks at it, ties it up, puts it in the trash bag and throws it out. And she is done. I mean, she is fast. We've got to talk to her because it works for her. And she was always like, well, I'm the happiest person, right? And I was like, well, good point. I can't argue with that, but I don't know that I would be, right? You've taken this and you put it away. You're like, that person, I'm done. I don't need to waste any more time on that person. Whereas me, I don't know if it is about the other person, especially, if you have the love for them still, but it's also about you and how did you invest so much in somebody and then it didn't work out. So I had to go through my process, and I feel like where I am today, I'm really happy with what I did. I'm really happy that I didn't let anyone pressure me or rush me or anything like that. And like I've said, I was living all along. I wasn't, it's not like I stayed in my bed ever. Um, I never spent a day like wallowing in my bed. I mean, I was just sad, but I would call you while I was on my way to pickleball, or would listen to the sad songs afterwards, or, I would talk with people at a restaurant and cry my eyes out, but I was still out with people. You know what I mean? And I've said this before about you. You helped me to really not self-isolate. And I think that is critical. Even while you're healing, you can be moving forward and doing other things. Or is that just the healing itself,
Right. Or is
Is
it
like,
the time? And we've talked about that too. Like, how much does time help? How much does intention help? How much do other people help? How much does
well,
reframing
it
help?
isn't
Right.
just time, it is intention. And, you know, I'll bring up your mom's death, watching you go through and process your mother's death. Like, there's nothing that could have been done, right? Like, it happened and she passed away, and it's horribly tragic, and you have to still live. Like, we're here. We're here after a breakup. And to me, breakups feel a lot like death. It's like you feel so just, I feel like it's just, you're lost. You're free falling, but we're still here, and we don't need to suffer, And I think that you have to have people around you who can help you. And I think your experience of dealing with that loss is probably so different because you were so open to other people being there for you. Would you agree?
Yeah, I feel like there were some things I just have put into my habits after the breakup, that from the healing process, that I've just naturally leaned on, after my mom's death. It's certainly a different kind of a healing, but at the same way, there were some things I'm still, doing therapy. I'm still, choosing happiness and gratitude and those things that I know worked for me in my breakup healing. And they're helping me through this process with death. And, there's certain things that are going to be different because it was, a romantic relationship versus a parent's death. But there are some things that are the same.
It's a love relationship,
right? It is some things that are the same. And, there have been some feelings where I've felt out of control after my mom's death. And I'm remembering what that felt like similarly to a breakup, feeling like out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when am I going to feel better? I want to feel better. I want to feel better soon because I hate suffering and I hate feeling how horrible I feel. And, part of it was, while I was doing all those things intentionally with my breakup healing plan to kind of get through the suffering quickly, I also knew that, I didn't want to rush it to the point where, I didn't feel what I needed to feel. I mean, that's what they say, feel until it's all been felt. So I didn't want to rush it and compartmentalize and all of a sudden be, sticking things, deep down in my psyche where they would come out later on. So, trying to, you have to move through it, right? Not around it, not over it. And I had to move through it. And I wanted to find out how could I move through it in a way that was just less painful. And so, it's never going to be absent of pain, but there were things that I have done for both situations that have simply helped, right? Not isolating myself, finding connection, still finding joy in the things that I'm doing, relishing memories that were good. I mean, it's certainly easier with someone who's passed than someone, who you feel, you were in a relationship with and are not in one anymore, but they're still the same, right? You think of the good times. And so, those things do help. And so it sounds like for you, you had the process that you feel like you needed to have, and it came, in some sense, the process was organic, but the things that you did during the process were, intentional and allowing to be, kind of have some fluidity from that. Like, here's my intention, but I'm going to get even more out of it than I expected. And for me, the healing plan was great. As I mentioned before, it helped me feel like a sense of control when I was feeling out of control, which was really important for me. Whether that was a real control or not, it probably was a false sense of it, but I felt like I had more control. But there were some disadvantages, and I learned how to navigate those. Like, once I would write something down, I felt compelled to do it and try it over and over and over. And finally, I just had to let it go. Sometimes I had to say it's okay that this didn't work. There have been several books that I started, around dealing with breakups or heartache or whatever. And, even now I'm, listening to a lot of books on grief, and death and things. and some of them just aren't resonating with me. And now I'm okay shutting them off and saying, I'm going to
Right.
find something different. And before I was like, oh no, this is on the healing plan. If I don't do the whole thing, it's not completed and I don't get my check mark. But now I'm okay with that. I'm okay with listening to a podcast series and only picking the ones that I want to hear and not having to feel compelled to listen to every episode ever recorded. Or I've gone to some events that were really fulfilling. I used to go to this workshop series on all of these different things about picking a partner and attachment styles. And it was really interesting. And there's probably another 30 or 40 topics I hadn't gone to events about. And I just decided I was done. I didn't need to go to any more of those. So the plan was good because it gave me a wide array of things to try. But then as long as I allowed myself to deviate from the plan, add to it, stop going and doing things on it, then the plan became way more useful. It was almost like the plan needed to be like this dynamic, living and breathing entity rather than a very fixed document that I had to just refer to.
Right. Well, and you can write it out on a list and then highlight the ones you like, or, pick these ones, or, okay, I'll try this. And if it's not working, but honestly, I think the most important thing in healing from any kind of loss is you cannot shut yourself off. You just cannot. That is terrible. It's not good for anybody, even an introvert. You've got to have the people in your life who are willing to be there when you're crying, when you're sad, and can listen to you over and over again. And I think, to me, throughout everything I've been through in my life, that's the most important thing, is having those friends, having those people, having my sisters be able to listen, even when they disagree and they say stuff that I'm like, can you not say that to me anymore? Because it's not, I get you're coming from a place where you're just trying to help me, but it's not helping. Just listen to me or just hear me. And I used to be awful at that, especially having been a cop and a lawyer. Do this, do that, and move on. Do it. But I'm not like that anymore. And, that's come from a lifetime of enduring these things, right? So I think having those people in your life who also understand that, it helps all of us, because today will be my time, tomorrow may be your time, next week may be our friend's time. And we all need to be there for each other. And I mean, I think that's the biggest lesson of all these things, because one relationship ends, be it death or be it a breakup, you still have all these other relationships in your life. And we have to remember that one relationship isn't our end all be all. It can't be.
Yeah, it can't be. Well, and as you talk about this exact thing, not that I prioritized most important to the least important items on my healing plan, but I would like to mention, out of my 44 items, number 1 is talk with friends, family, and anyone else who will listen.
Wow. That's number 1.
That is number 1 on my list. Yeah.
See?
Not get advice. Nope.
Right.
I would get recommendations. I'd be like, well, you could try this or you could try this. And I would add it to my healing plan. But the idea was that I wanted people to listen. And just like you, I needed people to listen over and over. And, it wasn't like, I wanted people to listen so that they could be filled in with new information. Because sometimes people would say, well, you already told me this. And I would say, well, I'm going to tell you this about 100 more times, because the role of this communication is not for you to get new information about the world. It's about you just listening to what I have to say. And for me, that I would probably say was the most important item on my entire healing plan that I listed.
Oh my God. See, we've come to the same place.
I know, right?
Isn't that amazing?
Virgo, type A inspired hiking buddy, podcast co-host, kind of shared brain in some ways, right?
Yeah. I mean, we came to the exact same place. I mean, that was the most important thing for both of us. And we didn't even talk about this before. So I find it very interesting, because we do look at things so differently. We have such a different approach to life, and the end all be all of it is all the sum of all the relationships. That is the most important thing, to me, or I think to you, and I really think should be for everybody, because that's what makes life worth living, is the richness of connection with other people,
Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, we are out of time. Another great conversation, about the healing plan. So really thinking about, what is your process for healing? And is it more, organic, or, kind of haphazard, or what do you call it? Scattershot. Is it more kind of scattershot? Is it more definitive, like actually writing something down and sticking to it? Is it definitive and organic where you write it down, but then you deviate from it and it kind of lives and breathes its own life? What is your plan for healing? And, we can talk, and we have talked, and we'll continue to talk about the specific items that have worked for us in healing as, we continue, as you listen to other episodes in this series. But I think what's most important here is that understanding that your process for healing is just as important as the items and the activities that you do to move towards healing. So how are you approaching that process? So think about that. And, keep that healing plan. If you decide to put one together, keep that healing plan handy, because I had no idea in my case that, I have a healing plan for a breakup that's come really, in handy for, dealing with death. And so you never know the kind of healing you're going to need to do. And sometimes these things can really help. So, until we talk again in another episode, make sure to go out there and rock those relationships. If you liked what you heard, check out our show notes for resources from today's episode. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram under Rock That Relationship, and go to our website at rockthatrelationship.com for updated episodes and more great information.
Thanks for listening. Now go rock those relationships.